Here we go. This is Math 2, Mr. Trutna here from Clovis High School. This is Unit 1, Worksheet 3. And what we're going to be applying today is we're going to be applying the Triangle Sum Theorem, which says that no matter what the triangle looks like, no matter what kind of triangle, what type of triangle we're dealing with, the sum of the interior angles will always add up to 180 degrees. So if you see in number 1 and number 2, we want to find the measure of angle 1. Well, the way that we would do that is we would apply this theorem, the Triangle Sum Theorem, which says that if I take the three interior angles, angle 1 plus 31 plus 66, if I add them up in any order, it doesn't matter which order I add them up into, they're going to be equal to 180 degrees. Okay, so all of these represent degrees right here. So angle 1 would be in degrees. You don't have to put the degree symbol if you don't want to. And then what you can do is, once you verify that you've set up the equation correctly, you could solve. Alright, so angle 1 plus 31 plus 66 is 97. That's going to be equal to 180. And then I'm going to subtract 97. I'm just going to be using my algebra skills in the inverse math operations to solve the equation out. Okay, so 180 take away 97, that's equal to 83. So in number 1, angle 1 is going to be equal to, 83 degrees. Okay, moving on, we're going to do angle number 2 the same exact way. So we're going to set up the equation, angle 1 plus one of the other interior angles, 121, plus the third interior angle, 52, that the sum of those is going to add up to 180. I'm going to combine the 121 and the 52, so this equation would become angle 1 plus 173 is equal to 180, and then I'm going to take away 173 from each side of the equation. That's called using the inverse math operation. And angle 1 is going to be equal to 7 degrees. Okay, so that's how you would go about solving for a missing angle. In this case, angle 1 would be the missing angle. Moving on to number 6, what we're doing is, when we get to number 6 is we are going to be using the same concept, except for now we're going to have to apply some of the other knowledge that we had to know. Okay, and if you notice, in this problem we are having to find the value of each variable is the instructions. So we need to figure out the value of x, the value of y, and the value of z. Okay, so what goes on in this is that don't try to find the problems in alphabetical order. Sometimes it works out that you can, but I don't know if that's probably the best strategy. What I noticed right away is that this angle right here, which is denoted as 63 degrees, and this angle right here, those are vertical angles. So vertical angles are always equal. So that means y has to be 63 degrees. Okay, so I'm just going to write a 63 in right there. Then, in order to find z, what I could do is, I know that z, which is an interior angle of this triangle on the top part of the diagram, that the z plus the 85 plus this angle right here, which we just figured out was 63, if I add those up, according to the Triangle Sum Theorem, those three angles will add up to 180. So that would be z plus, combining the 85 and the 63, that's 148. That's going to be equal to 180. And then I'm going to take away 148 from both sides of the equation. So z would be equal to 32. So there we go. Alright, so now I need to go down to the triangle on the bottom part of the diagram, which I'll go ahead and outline in red. And now I need to find the value of x. Okay, so in order to find the value of x, and since x is on the inside of a triangle, I need to find two of the angles on the inside. Well, I already know that one's 63, that was given to me, and this 130, it's not inside the triangle, it's outside the triangle, but the angle right next to it, which we would call adjacent to it, has to be 50 degrees. So this angle right here has to be 50 degrees, and the reason is because anytime you have two angles right next to each other, adjacent to each other, and they're adjacent to each other on a straight line, they have to combine to make 180. 50, 130 combined to make 180. Now I could use the triangle sum theorem to solve for x. So I know that the x plus the 50 plus the 63 is going to have to be equal to 180. Combining the 53 and the 63, I would get x plus 113 is equal to 180. I would subtract 113 from each side, and we now know that x is equal to 67 degrees. So there we go. So there's the three answers for x, y, and z in number 6. In number 7, the problem says find each missing angle measure. Whoops, let me go over here. There we go. Okay, so in number 7, we're looking for the angle that has a number in it, and that's the angle that we want to find. And if you notice, we have a 1 right here. Well, the 1 where this angle is, that represents the angle on the outside of the triangle. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to find this angle right here on the inside of the triangle. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to take the two angles that I know, 30 and 99. I'm going to add those up. That's 129. And then to find that missing angle, I'm going to use the triangle sum theorem, and I'm going to subtract 129 from 180. So 129 or 180 minus 129 turns out to be 51. Okay, that's not my answer I'm looking for, but I'm going to need it. So that angle right there is 51 degrees. Okay, now we're going to use the fact that what I just talked about in number 6 is whenever you have two angles that are right next to each other, that means they're adjacent, and they're next to each other on a straight line, that means they have to add up to 180. They're supplementary. So that means angle 1 is going to be, if I take angle 1 and I add it to the 51, those two angles are going to have to be equal to 180. So all I have to do to find angle 1 is take away 51 from 180, and we get x, I'm sorry, not x, we're talking about angle 1. Angle 1 is 129 degrees. So there we go. In number 8, we're going to use the same concept as we did in number 7, but if you notice that the angle that I'm trying to find is the 2 right here, so I'm trying to find this angle here, which is inside the triangle. Well, I know that angle is 26.8. It's inside the triangle. The 48.3 is not inside the triangle. So what I need to do is I need to first find this angle here. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I know that the 48.3 plus this angle right here, which let's go ahead and just call it x because we don't know what it is. We know those two angles have to add up to 180. Why do they have to add up to 180? Well, it's because they're adjacent, they share this side, and they're adjacent on a straight line. Okay, so in order to get my answer, I'm going to subtract 48.3. So 180 minus 48.3 turns out to be 131.7. So x is equal to 131.7. Well, that's not my answer, that's that angle right there. Is 131.7 degrees. Now to find angle 2, I'm going to use the triangle sum theorem. So I know that angle 2 plus the 131.7 angle plus the third angle on the interior, the inside, 26.8, I add all those up, those are going to be equal to 180. Okay, combining the 131.7, I'm going to add it with the combine it with the 26.8, that's 158.5. That's going to be equal to 180, and then I'm going to take away 158.5 from each side of the equation, and that will give me my angle 2. So in this problem here, we're going to get angle 2 is equal to 180 minus 158.5, which is 21.5. So angle 2 is 21.5. In number 9, we're going to find, there's two angles we need to find, angle 3 and angle 4. So angle 4 is on the inside of the triangle, and we already know these two angles. So that means if I take 62 and I add it to 44, that's going to give me 106 degrees. That means that angle 4 is going to be 180 minus 106. So angle 4 is going to be 74 degrees. Okay? So I'm going to write that in, 74 degrees. Now you should notice that angle 4 is right next to angle 3. They share this side right here, so that makes the angles adjacent, and they're sharing it on a straight line. So that means these two angles have to add up to make 180. So that means that angle 3 plus the angle 4, which is 74, those two angles, excuse me, I said 3 a second ago, have to add up to 180. If I take away 74 from 180, I'm going to get angle 3 is 106 degrees. So there we go. So there's the answers to number 9. Okay, turning the paper over, you were asked to do number 10. Number 10, the instructions ask, what are the values of x and y in the right triangle? Okay, so we know this symbol right here means that that angle is a right angle. Right angles are always 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to write in the 90 degrees. You don't ever have to do that. We know that that symbol means it's a right angle. Right angles mean 90 degrees. So how am I going to find y? Well, I'm going to use the Triangle Sum Theorem. I'm going to say the y angle plus the 90 degree angle plus the 34 degree angle. Those three angles have to add up to 180. 90 plus 34 is 124. So that means I get that for my equation. I take away 124 from both sides of the equation, and y turns out to be 56. So there's my answer for y. Alright, I'm going to write that in right here, 56. Now how do I find x? Well, y and x are next to each other. They share that side right there. That makes them adjacent, and they share that on a straight line. So that means these two angles add up to 180. So that means to find x, I just need to go 180 minus the 56, which turns out to be 124. So there's my answer for x. Okay, 124 degrees. Remember, if we're talking about angles, the correct measurement to label it is in degrees. So I should put a degree right there. Okay, and numbers 11, 12, and 14. The instructions tell us to find the values of the variables and the measures of the angles. Okay, so in this problem right here, we have a right triangle, so we know there's a 90 degree angle. We're going to add that to this angle here, which is denoted as 3x. We're going to add it to this angle up here, which is denoted as 4x minus 1. And when we add them all up, using the Triangle Sum Theorem, all the angles add up to 180. Then I'm going to solve this equation for x. So I'm going to combine the positive 3x with the positive 4x. That makes positive 7x. I'm going to combine the 90 with the minus 1, so that makes positive 89. That's going to be equal to 180. Subtracting 89 from both sides of the equation, that gives me a new equation when the 89s cancel out of 7x is equal to 180 minus 89 is 91. Then I divide both sides by 7, so x is going to be equal to 13. Now that is part of my answer. Remember, the instruction said find the values of the variables. There's only one variable here. And then I need to find the measures of the angles. So what I do now is I take my x value, which is 13, and I'm going to substitute it back in. So this angle, which is denoted as 3x, will become 3 times 13. So this angle is 49 degrees. The angle up here, which is denoted as 4 times x, becomes 4 times 13 minus 1, which is 52 minus 1. So this angle is 51 degrees. Okay, now how do I know if I did it right? Well, 49 plus 51 is 90. 90 plus 90 is 180. The angles of a triangle on the interior add up to 180. Number 12, we're going to do the same concept. We're going to take the three interior angles, we're going to add them up. So we have an x plus this bottom angle here, which is denoted by 6x plus 10, plus this interior angle up here, which is denoted as x plus 2. We know that the three interior angles of any triangle always add up to 180 degrees. And then I'm going to solve this problem for x. I'm going to combine the x, remember that's a 1x there, the coefficient is always 1, it's invisible but it's there, plus 6x plus another 1x, that gives me 8x. Then I'm going to combine the positive 10 with the positive 2 to make positive 12. This is called simplifying the equation. And then I'm going to solve this equation for x by using the inverse math operations. The inverse of plus 12 is minus 12, so I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. My new equation will become 8x equals 168. And the inverse of multiplying something by 8 is dividing by 8, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. Those 8s would cancel out. X is equal to 21. Okay, now I need to find the measure of each angle. So I'm going to take my 21, which is x, and everywhere I see an x, I'm going to substitute 21 in its place. That means that angle is 21. This angle would become 21 plus 2, 23 degrees. This angle would become 6 times 21, then plus 10. That's 126 plus 10, so that's 136 degrees. How do I know if I did it right? Add up the three angles. 21 plus 23 is 44. 44 plus 136 is 180. There we go. Okay, last assigned problem to you, number 14. Now if you notice in number 14, there's actually three triangles in this picture. We've got this triangle here on the left. We've got this triangle here, which we'll call the triangle on the right, and then the entire shape is also a triangle. So what you want to do is you want to key in, if you're finding an angle on the inside of a triangle, see if there's any of the triangles where you know two of the angles, and we do. The right triangle right here on the right, we know two of the angles. That's 90, that's 38. So that means if I take 90 and I add it to 38, add up these two angles, which adds up to 128, to find x, I'm just going to go 180 minus 128. I'm using the Triangle Sum Theorem. We're saying those three angles add up to 180. 180 minus 128 is 52. So x is 52. Okay, so I'm just going to write in a 52 there. It may help me for later on or not. I don't think it is, though, in this case. Okay, so now what do I do next? Well, if you notice, that z angle is right next to the 90-degree angle. They're adjacent. They share that side. And they're right on a straight line. So that means if that's 90, this angle has to add to that angle to make 180. So z has to be 90 as well. Okay, so there we go. We didn't have to really do any work there. Z just is equal to 90 degrees. So we should have maybe inherently have known that. Okay, so now that I know that that angle is 90 and that angle is 65, and that is y, I know that y plus that 90, I'm going to use the Triangle Sum Theorem, plus that 65, when I add up those three angles from the triangle here on the left, those three have to add up to 180. 90 plus 65 is 155. So y plus 155 is going to be equal to 180. And then I'm going to subtract 155 from both sides of the equation. Once again, that's called the inverse math operation. Y is going to be equal to, let's see, 25. There we go. Okay, so there's your answers. Enjoy the video. Hopefully you did.